everybody. Wow. Inspiring action. Those are two pretty gigantic words, especially in a room like this. And I guess before I get started, being a graduate of Leadership Denver, a program that the Chamber puts on, and also being the keynote speaker, it comes with a few advantages. Class of 2009, where are you? So it's amazing how people come together and join together when the cause is inspirational. So to inspire action, I just want to share with you a small portion of my journey through life and how it sort of taught me that when you really stretch it, anything is possible. So like the video shared with you, I didn't just wake up one day and decide to climb Mount Everest. Being a sick little kid, that didn't just come automatically. It was really a challenging time for me. Growing up and really not being able to breathe, where every step you needed to be strategic about where you were going and why in order to stay healthy and safe. So I started spending my summers in Ecuador working on Cotopaxi, climbing, and being a hut boy. Now, if any of you guys have ever seen the movie The Water Boy with Adam Sandler, anybody ever seen that? That's kind of what being a hut boy is like in Ecuador. It is a thankless, bottom of the totem pole job where you have to wake up before everybody else, melt snow and ice to fill people's water bottles, and go to bed after everybody was asleep. But kind of like we heard this morning, if you start to blend the lines between what you love and what you do, the little things don't matter. So the lessons from Cotopaxi for me were no different. I share this picture with you. This is the upper reaches of Cotopaxi, and if you can see the tiny little dots, those are actually climbers. I tried to summit this thing 36 times before actually reaching the top. Because as a hut boy, which translates to be the junior guide, and being a high school student doing this, if anybody wanted to turn around, guess who had to go back? If anybody wasn't feeling good, guess who had to turn around and go back to the hut? You're right, that was my job. So it brings up the interesting question of how bad do you want it? How bad do you want what you're going after? So a lot of lessons come from the mountains. We're lucky to live in a place where we can go out for the weekend and learn some of those lessons experientially, day by day, step by step, and breath by breath. And for me, it was no different. In the middle of the drudgery, in the middle of learning how to be a mountain guide and how to lead other people, there are those magical moments, those moments professionally and personally that you never forget. Sometimes the summits came with big teams where we could celebrate our successes, be vocal, cheer, celebrate what we had done, all that we had accomplished, and sometimes they would come alone, under great strain and great tribulation. So about this time in my career, I still had that dream of Everest that I had as a kid. I was slowly building a resume, and we all know what that's like, right? Sometimes we take the lateral moves, sometimes we take the moves down, often, always hoping for that move up. And for me, it was no different. I started asking around for people that I knew in Colorado of anybody that was going to the Himalayas. Did anybody know anybody that was going to Himalayas to climb anything? And a friend of mine told me a very interesting story. He said, Luis, I know this guy who just moved to town. He just moved to Golden. He's an English teacher from Arizona. It's kind of an interesting story, and he's got a really interesting project. You guys should sit down and have lunch, see what you can come up with together. And all I heard was, well, somebody's got an idea to go to the Himalayas. I'll go. I'm interested. This is the guy that they wanted me to meet. Don't let the monk hat fool you. He's not a monk. But he is a very, very snappy dresser. This is Eric Weinmeier, the only blind person to ever summit Mount Everest. Now, at the time, Eric was indeed an English teacher from Phoenix, Arizona, recently relocated to Denver to start teaching at Kent Denver. He had summited Kilimanjaro with some friends, highest mountain in Africa. He had been climbing a little bit in South America, but he had this dream of being the first blind person to climb Mount Everest. And we started talking over lunch about everything that we had done and all the trials and tribulations that had brought us to that point in life. And before I knew it, as I was taking a big gulp of iced tea, I'll never forget this, he leans across the table and he says, so I've got this idea to go climb Mount Everest, and I was wondering, would you be interested in coming along with me? Well, I first proceeded to spit out my tea onto the floor of the restaurant, and the next thing I said, of course, was yes. How could you say no to something like that? For me, as a child, from 7 years old to that point in my life, this is something that I had dreamed about. It's what inspired me. It's what drove my professional career. I said yes. I didn't really pay attention to any other details. I sang all the way home, and the minute I pulled back into my driveway, a couple of interesting thoughts started to occur to me. A, you just agreed to climb Mount Everest with the blind guy. B, it had never been done before. And C, was it a really good idea to even try this? But there's that pull, right? There's that thing that you think about from the time when you wake up to the time that you fully become conscious. That dream that you have that inspires you when you hear your favorite song, you talk to a mentor or friend, and for me it was Everest. It didn't really matter if Eric was blind because I was going to get the opportunity to do just that, to try. So Everest really is the big show, and for those of you out there that are financiers, you'll probably appreciate a little math problem that goes a little something like this. So if Luis leaves the United States with 5 tons of food, fuel, and equipment, flies 5,000 miles, rents 2 Russian helicopters, hires 27 yaks, 146 porters, and walks 38 miles to base camp, how many dollars will he have left over? It's one of those incredibly mind-boggling problems that you don't really think about or associate when you get ready to go climb Mount Everest. And being a non-math person and being responsible for the budget of this trip, it was incredibly humbling. But inspiration comes in many forms. It's that question of how hard do you want to lean in? How bad do you really want what you're going after? There were some mornings where I woke up and I said, you know, I know my toothbrush is in a yellow duffel bag on a yak, and I think it's like a quarter mile down the trail. I'm clearly not brushing my teeth this morning. That's how logistically challenging this trip was. And as we got closer to base camp, we had a live website set up for this trip. And base camp is at the bottom of Mount Everest, a little over 17,000 feet. And we were able to send live updates every single day from the mountain, a little article and a couple of pictures trying to share with the world this idea that inspired all of us. There were 6 guides working with Eric, a team of Sherpas, a documentary film crew, and a couple of folks that were just coming along to base camp to trek. Here we thought that when we posted these updates every single day on the internet, that we were going to hear back, good job, keep going, get after it. But an interesting thing happened as we started to read the responses. They went a little something like this. You're going to kill him. And not only are you going to kill him, but who would ever want to go climbing with the mountain guide that intentionally killed the blind guy? So you're going to kill him, and you're going to destroy your career. Don't do it. Don't do it. We couldn't believe what we were hearing. And again, that question, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? And again, for me, it always returned to what inspires me the most. And for me, it wasn't about Mount Everest anymore. It was about proving to the rest of the world that being blind didn't matter. So I share this picture with you because it's an interesting paradox. Somebody's got to pay for this trip. And there were a couple of sponsors at this point that really stood behind and believed in what we were doing, regardless of what the naysayers were up to. The sponsor on the left, the National Federation of the Blind, that's obvious. But about this point in my career, I had picked up a few sponsors of my own. Allegra, my allergy medicine, decided to come on board. So we used to like to call this trip the blind leading the sneezy, or the sneezy leading the blind. Depends on who you ask. So about this point, other teams that were in base camp and that were on Mount Everest started coming to our camp because they were curious. They were definitely a little doubtful. They thought it was a big stunt, but they wanted to hear it from our mouths what we were up to. So it's an interesting question. How does inspiration grow? How does inspiration grow into action? Now, as a mountaineer, it's pretty simple. Left foot, right foot. Breathe in, breathe out. But for sharing that story, it took belief in that story. It took belief in what we were doing. We still kept up the live blogging via satellite phones, trying to tell people what we were up to, and started to not pay attention to the people that said it wasn't possible. So I share this picture with you to give you an idea of the elevations on Mount Everest. Now, I'm sure you've seen things in the media that says, oh, it's crowded, it's overdone, it's undone, all the things under the sun that can debunk the magic of Everest. Let me be the first person to tell you it's still the biggest mountain in the world. And it still takes 3 months, door to door, to climb it. So as we got ready to move up the mountain and unpacked everything and got settled into base camp, we got ready to start moving higher, and we were all excited because this was really the beginning of what was pretty much 2 years of preparation. We see these coming up valley, and we know what this is. Anybody that has a ladder at home, it's your average aluminum ladder from Home Depot. Yet the cracks in the glacier down at the bottom of Mount Everest, the crevasses, are so big that you need to take your average aluminum ladder from Home Depot, strap a couple together, and that's the only way over some of these divides. Now, imagine, right? Pretty good. People always say, oh, that's staged. That can't be right. That can't be true. Imagine if you can see how treacherous this would be. Now imagine being with someone that can't see, with all of us that are sighted, screaming at the top of our lungs, no, 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 left, 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 no, 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 go to the right. Okay, now left foot up just a little bit, leg windmilling in deep space. Everybody else saw that, all the other teams saw that, and they said, oh yeah, they're definitely going to kill him. And it's probably a good idea to stay away. But again, what's your belief? What's your inspiration? Left foot, right foot, breathe in, breathe out. So the higher you go on Mount Everest, there are a couple of places where it's pretty straightforward walking. But, you know, it brings up the interesting point of when you have to share that vision that inspires you, especially with Eric, we have to explain not only where the left foot and the right foot went, but also what we were seeing. So when you're walking up the valley towards Mount Everest and you see something like this, and Eric says, well, what are you looking at? I'm like, well, we're looking at Everest. Well, what does it look like? It's big. Well, how big? Well, really big. How big is really, really big? So how descriptive are you in that journey? We thought about that a lot, and after about a month of work and effort, up, down, we finally established Camp 2, which is about halfway up Mount Everest, and I was feeling really good about our success at this point. We had worked really hard, we were proving the naysayers wrong, left foot, right foot, breathe in, breathe out. And as I was sitting there at sunset one night, Eric came over and sat down next to me, and I was feeling pretty good about what we had accomplished. And I said, you know, buddy, we could go down to base camp tomorrow and go home and feel really good about it. You're higher than any blind person's ever been on Mount Everest before. We've done it. We've proved all the naysayers wrong. I was thinking we were going to have a nice hug, have a little bro moment, and go to sleep, and that was going to be it. But an interesting thing happened. He got this really intense look on his face, and he turned to me, and he said, if you really believe what you just said, go down to base camp, pack your stuff, and go home tomorrow. I was floored. What I was trying to do was celebrate what we had accomplished. And so I asked him, what are you talking about? What do you mean? I want to be here. I'm just trying to celebrate how far we've come. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, Luis, you can see exactly where we're going. You can see exactly where we've come from. And you know exactly where we are right now. I can't see any of that. I have to rely on every single word you guys choose to share with me. We're facing the hardest part of the climb from this point forward. So basically what we're facing is making the impossible possible. So unless you believe that the impossible is possible, I don't want you to leave Camp 4 and head for the summit with us. You've got to believe that. Right in the middle of your soul. You have to believe that. I agreed, and we went our separate ways, but I kept thinking about it as I laid in my tent that night. And as we got up the next morning and started to climb towards Camp 3, it really hit me. Is the impossible really possible? What makes the impossible possible? And the steeper it got, I had this mantra in my head. What makes the impossible possible? What makes the impossible possible? Now, once you get to Camp 3, it's kind of dug out halfway up the hill to where if you decide to take a walk in the middle of the night and you don't have your gear on, you're going to go for about a 3,000-foot slide down to the bottom of this face. And so as we dug into Camp 3, we knew that this was it. All of our oxygen, all of our food, all the preparations were done for our summit push. We don't leave Camp 3 to go to Camp 4, to go onto the summit until we're absolutely ready to move. Because once you start oxygen, if you run out, there's no 7-Eleven on the corner to refill your bottle. So this line reflects about 2.5 months of effort and a lifetime of dreaming for me. And as I laid there in the tent back down at Camp 2 and we got ready for our summit push, after a couple of days of watching the weather, I knew that good, bad, or ugly, succeed or fail, however you define that, the next couple of days would come to stand as the cornerstone of the rest of my life. So we left Camp 2, onward to Camp 3, and you're excited. It's kind of the end of a fundraiser. It's the end of all of this effort. It's the end of a climb. We were just excited to actually be in the game and be moving. And as we started to leave Camp 3 and move over towards Camp 4, as an Everest nerd, I knew we were walking into the history books. I knew that band of yellow rock used to be an old seabed floor, and that other Everest climbers that I knew had come back with seashells. So the thing that was in my head as we started to walk across, I wonder if I can find a fossil at 25,000 feet. And as we slowly worked our way into Camp 4 at 26,000 feet to get set up, I was beside myself with anticipation. We were right at the jump-off point for the summit. The upper mountain was obscured in cloud. And when you arrive at the highest campsite on the planet, you know you're going to be sleeping higher than anybody else that night. So you get into survival mode. You set up tents. You hand out oxygen bottles. I couldn't really see where we were going, but I was just excited to be there and excited to be a part of this process. And then a big half an hour of wind came through and cleared the upper mountain of clouds. And this is what we saw. Now, if you knew nothing about Mount Everest and I shared this picture with you first, what would you say? Looks like a camp at the bottom of a mountain, doesn't it? Guess what? That's exactly what it looks like from 26,000 feet on Mount Everest. It looks like you're just getting started. So it brought up this interesting thought for me. The finish line keeps on moving. Where's the goal? I think I'm there. I'm not there. I actually sat down dumbfounded, laid back against a pile of fabric, and I looked up at this thing, and I had no idea how we were going to get this done. And a good Sherpa friend of mine, Pasang Tenzing, came over and said, "Luis, how are you?" And I'll never forget, Pasang, who's climbed Everest 12 times at this point, my first expedition, I lean over to Pasang, I point up at the mountain, I'm like, "Pasang, did you know about this?" And he actually laughed. He said, "Yes, looks like mountain on top of mountain, doesn't it?" I'm like, "Yeah, did you know about this?" And he kept being really insistent, "Luis, you have to get up and move. Get into the tent, have some tea." And I couldn't really understand why he was being so insistent. And I said, "Give me a minute, I'm a little overwhelmed." And he finally said, "Luis, you have to get up and move. You're laying on a dead body." What I thought was an old tent was actually someone that had the same goals, the same dreams, the same aspirations that I did, laid down and never got back up. I crawled into the tent, and all my friends were snapping pictures, and they were really excited, and this was the look on my face. So my friend took this picture, immediately put down the camera and said, "What's wrong?" And I explained, there's a body 2 feet away from our camp. It looks like there's a mountain on top of a mountain outside, and we're here with the blind guy. What are we doing? This is foolish. I started to believe everything any naysayer said about what we were trying to do. And of course, right at that moment, Eric from his tent calls out, "Hey, Luis, could you come over here for a minute?" I knew immediately what he wanted to talk about, the impossible possible conversation. But I tried to put on a straight face, I got dressed, and I went over to his tent, and I unzipped the tent door, and this is what I saw. Now, you're already kind of cuckoo from living at 26,000 feet, but this is sort of how my mental process went. Guy on the left can see, guy on the right can see. Guy in the middle, blind, playing cards. Guy on the right can see, guy on the left can see. Why is the blind guy playing cards? And of course, Eric says, "Hey, would you mind crawling in here for a second? I think these guys are cheating." And then an interesting thing happened. He said, "How you doing?" Simple question. And of course, I try to fake it. "Oh, I'm good, ready to go." And he saw right through it. He can't see, but he's got ears like a bat. "No, you're not okay. I know about the body outside your tent. I know that it's a mountain on top of a mountain, because I heard you say it out loud along with a couple of cuss words. And I know that you're scared." And then I lost it. I said, "Absolutely, you're right. I don't know if we can do this." And he said, "Remember that conversation we had at Camp 2 about making the impossible possible?" And I stopped him cold. I said, "Now wait. If you ask me that right now, I'm not going a step higher, because I'm a little overwhelmed." And he answered with, "I get it, But for me, do you want to know what it makes it possible for me? The impossible possible for me? And he said, believe in me as much as I believe in you. Believe in me as much as I believe in you, and that's how we're going to get it done tonight. And what I found out later was that this was staged for me. Eric said, pull out the cards, let's pretend like we're playing, because we got to shake him out of his funk. What friendship, right? So you leave Camp 4 at 10 p.m. to climb through the night, hoping to summit the next morning and get back down before the afternoon storms. We all know what happens if you don't. If any of you have read Into Thin Air, the consequences are treacherous. So as we're climbing through the night, none of us were really jockeying for position to be with Eric on the summit. Now, if any of you have ever experienced a walk-in freezer with a fan in it, in your underwear, soaking wet, you might have an idea of how cold it is up there. 60 below, on average, where any exposed flesh is in danger of freezing. And because of the oxygen masks, we're screaming through them at Eric where to put his left foot, where to put his right foot. Breathe in, breathe out. And when the sun came up out over Tibet, it was the best sunrise I had ever seen in my entire life. Because for the first time, I started to wonder if we actually had what it took. This is a picture of the moon setting behind and the sun rising in front of Mount Everest with the shadow of Everest in between. Higher than anything else on the planet. And the higher we got, Chris Morris, the guy that was in front of Eric, said, you got to take him, Luis, my voice is gone. So it was business as usual. I stepped in line, got in front of him, come on, buddy, let's go. Left foot, right foot, breathe in, breathe out. And now the questioning changed from what does it look like to being on a road trip with a 4-year-old, are we there yet? Legitimate question, right? Because I'm asking myself the same thing. Are we there yet? And so I said, I think we're close. There's a bump up ahead. Some people are stopping. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. We're pretty high. This could be it. So hang out for a second. Let's get up here, see what's going on. We could be really close. And we got to the top of this bump, and this is what I saw. Does it ever end? Does the finish line ever stay stagnant? We all know that's true. It moves. It never stays stagnant. The finish line is always a dynamic thing. I stopped so dead in my tracks, Eric ran right into the back of me, and he's like, what's going on? Here's where it shifted. Here's where I believe that the impossible was possible. Now, I'm looking at the last piece of real estate on the planet with the jet stream streaming across the summit. I turned around, I looked him square in the face, and I said, you know what, buddy? It looks great. It's a cakewalk. We're there. It's done. Do you believe that the impossible is possible? How do you do that? Believe in me as much as I believe in you. So as we left what turned out to be the South Summit and continued on towards the main summit, we were really focusing, because at this point there is no room for error. The tiniest little slip can cost you your life. As we were moving up higher and looking at what potentially was the first blind person to ever reach the summit, Eric started asking, where's the rest of the team? Are they close? And on summit day, it's kind of this slow motion movie. You're in a down suit, ski goggles, you have an oxygen mask, you're all bundled up, your peripheral vision's kind of gone, you can't really see. So I told him, I think they're close, buddy, but focus on what we're doing. So when you think about inspiring action, when you think about what that means, to believe what someone else believes so strongly that you're willing to be a part of every single step of the process. This picture is every single Westerner and every single Sherpa from our team waiting at 28,000 feet for Eric to reach the summit first. Believe in me as much as I believe in you. And eventually you come around a corner and there's no place else to go. So a lot of my friends from the 2009 class kid with me. Yeah, you went back a second time, third time, yada, yada, yada. You went to the summit with someone that couldn't see. You still have 10 fingers and 10 toes. Why would you ever choose to go back? Funny, I know. Whoever consciously makes that choice? It's crazy. And I guess for me, it's about inspiring action in others. It's about helping other people, perfect strangers, believe that the impossible is possible. Now, as civic leaders, most of you probably face that on some level every single day, personally or professionally. But for me, it all boils down to this. I'll share with you a final story. This is Pasang Tenzing. This is the guy that pulled me off the body at Camp 4. He is, without a doubt, one of my very best friends and has been on every single Himalayan expedition that I've ever done, right by my side. And after every trip, I'm always excited to go down valley and visit his village to see this guy. This is his father. He looks to be about 150 years old. We think he's in his 90s. Sherpas really don't keep calendars of their birth. But he was actually on Sir Edmund Hillary's trip in '53. When Hillary came back to build a school, Hillary brought him a coronation medal from the Queen. And I'm always so excited to share with him success, failure, what we've done, clients that made it, clients that didn't, all the different things that happen. And he calmly sits there and listens to the translation through Pasang. And he always ends with this one question, which is the same question that I will ask of all of you today. He says, Luis, that's fantastic. Sounds like you've had an amazing adventure. But what are you doing to make my grandchildren's world better? How will everything that you do make their world more extraordinary? So when you think about civic leadership and inspiring action, that inspiration comes from each and every one of you. Thank you very much.